as the trunk develops. Once it gets up and makes a heavy trunk, you don't need those little leaves up and down it all the time. But when you first plant this tree, just shorten those limbs. Go through every winter. I've got 6 cedar elms that I've planted at various places. I have a large yard, I have plenty of diversity. Don't worry, I'm not planting too many of the same tree. But I go through every winter and cut the little limbs back. This next year, in 3 years, have gone from this size to about this size, so I can probably take the limbs all the way off. But planting a tree, that's an especially important thing. As far as pruning and things like that, you'll have to come to our spring seminar. I'll go over that in detail. I'm not going to waste or bore everybody to death with that today. But one of the other very important things about creating your landscape is take pictures. It's kind of like, you know, my new puppy dog. When Roberta gets back from her 2 weeks in Colorado, she's going to think that dog has tripled in size, which she probably has. But I don't see it because every day she just gets a little bit bigger. If you really want to appreciate what you've accomplished, take some pictures before you start, take some pictures along the way, and you'd be amazed when you go back and look at it 5 years or 10 years from now at how much it's changed and how much pride you can take in what you have created in doing it. So take some pictures. It's a lot of fun to do. And I could go on talking all day long. I'm going to stop there. I will ask, if anybody needs to get up and go. I'll stay here and answer questions as long as anybody wants to ask, and I'll just start over here. Yes?
Red tips, 7 foot, 8 foot tall. How often do they need to be watered? And
well, once every 5 years, then maybe they'll die and you get rid of them and get a decent plant. No, in a drouthy situation, they probably need deep watering every 2 or 3 weeks. But you're going to have problems with them sooner or later.
if you have one, let's say, dying on the end and it's already dead, and I use the chainsaw, the roots, how far down do those go?
Depends on how good or how bad your soil is. Probably a foot down and 6 feet in each direction. Replant it with a loquat or a standard yopon holly or something that will live 100 years. Yes, ma'am.
I want to plant a yopon holly or something, whichever.
But
don't I have to plant 2?
No, no. You want berries, right?
Yeah.
And you know that the plants are male and female. Every plant that you buy in the nursery is probably going to be a female. And so you're not going to accomplish anything by planting 2. There are plenty of male plants around the area. Bees fly up to half a mile away.
You don't have to be in my yard.
No, absolutely not. I still think 2 yopons might be a good idea, but you don't have to do that in order to get berries.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
If I wanted to replace my red tips, what would I replace them with?
Loquat, standard yopon holly, xylosma. There are a lot of choices. Bring a picture and we'll tell you which one would do best. Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk a little bit about crepe myrtles?
Crepe myrtles are wonderful plants if you have lots of sun and you can give them adequate moisture. Crepe myrtles are, quote, xeriscape plants. They will grow once established with very little water. They will grow, but they will not bloom well. They will bloom well if you fertilize them and if you water them. The most important thing, thanks for coming, guys. Most important thing on crepe myrtles is understanding how big they're going to get and planting the plant that's going to grow to the appropriate size. Miniature crepe myrtles grow for the most part about 3 feet high. Dwarf crepe myrtles grow somewhere between 5 and 10 feet in height. And standard crepe myrtles grow somewhere between 12 and 30 feet in height, depending on the variety and the soil.
So what about the deer?
You're going to have to keep the deer away, at least until they get up big enough that the foliage is out of the reach of the deer.
Okay.
Then all you have to do is protect the trunk so the bucks don't rub the bark off when they decide to rub the velvet
Can you
off.
buy them that big?
You can buy them that big. Can you dig a hole that big? Maybe or maybe not, depending on where you are.
Well, we're out in solid rock again.
Yeah,
And that's,
you have to create a berm or a raised bed.
and will you get that height out of them? Will you get 20 feet out of a standard one?
Probably not.
No.
Probably 12, 14 feet.
How do you trim them? Because I see them along the highway, especially out into Stone Oak, and they're high and they bloom and they're pushing out on the
That's
vine.
fine to make trees out of them, and you do that by just taking the lower limbs off. Just
When do you do that?
from the day you plant them. Start taking the lower limbs out, select 5 to 7 major trunks and let them grow up. But the other thing that you see most places is what we call crepe myrtle, where they grow in and just whack them back to a given point every year. Crepe myrtles should virtually never be trimmed from the top.
No.
Working around. Yes, sir.
Any suggestions for deer resistant ground covers?
Deer resistant ground cover, deer resistant would be Vinca minor probably, or Vinca major. There are some native things that are not especially easy to find, but there's something called Dahlia, D-A-H-L-E-A. There is a plant that some people are trying to kill it, some people are trying to plant it. If you like it, you call it horse herb. If you don't like it, you call it straggler daisy. And again, one person will say it's the worst weed out there, the other will say, hey, this is a ground cover that grows, you know, in my yard. Yes?
When you say deep watering for a bush, how do you, or a tree, how do you determine how much you need to do that?
You basically turn the hose on very slowly, lay it down there, and leave it there for several hours, or overnight, or whatever. You want to wet the soil as deeply as the root system of the plant penetrates into the ground. Yes, sir.
Yes, I've got a crepe myrtle, this dynamite variety,
Dynamite, okay.
and the thing that I'm running into, I've fertilized and watered, but it's, first of all, it's slow in blooming. I'm just starting to get blooms on now, but it has a very short bloom time because it goes into making seeds. Is there a way I can trim that back so I can get more blooms?
If you cut the old seeds off as they start to develop, it will throw it back into a blooming cycle more quickly. One thing to remember about fertilizing plants, and crepe myrtles do like fertilizer, but fertilizer is not used instantly, and the fertilizer that your crepe myrtle is using for blooming now is probably what you put on in January. If you didn't start fertilizing till the leaves came out, till it started growing in March or April, then that fertilizer hadn't kicked in. You're going to do 6 things for the next month or so, and in August that thing's going to be full of blooms, and you're going to give credit to whatever the last thing you did. You're going to say that's why it looks so good. The truth is that the fertilizer you put on 6 months ago is finally kicking in. So patience, deep watering, and plenty of fertilizer, your dynamite will come around.
I use has to grow and stuff like that.
Has to grow is fast release but slow acting.
Okay.
If you want to use the fastest acting has to grow, use the has to grow lawn. Just don't spray it on the foliage or it will burn. But if you're looking to get growth out of something, the has to grow lawn has a lot more nitrogen in it that's released more quickly. I would tend to use the color essentials and be patient. Throw some of the Manita granular around for the long-term net result, and just recognize that the blooming next year is going to be a whole lot better than it is this year. Yes?
Would you repeat what you said about sun exposure and the season, summer?
Just with a given bed, you know, if something's out in the middle of the yard, for all practical purposes, it's going to get the same. But in the southern months, the sun is way off on the southern horizon, and the north side of your house will be shaded way on out. In the in the winter months, the sun's in the southern horizon, and the north side is really shaded. Summer months, the sun is as far to the north as it's going to be, and areas that were in the shade in the winter are now going to be in full, bright, hot sun. So if in doubt, you know, go out in the middle of the summer and mark where sun and shade line is. Go out in the middle of the winter and mark where the sun and shade line is, and you'll see the difference. But in the winter months, sun's to the south. That's why it's colder, because the sun's literally further away, and the shadows are going to be much deeper on the north side, and just the opposite on the summer. Of course, with deciduous trees, you have, you know, the same effect for different reasons. That pecan tree, it may be super shady underneath the middle of it in August, and come January, after all the leaves fall off, it's super sunny underneath there. So one more thing to keep in mind. Yes, ma'am?
Would you talk about a mulch that, number one, stays pretty? And I know that sounds stupid, but I mean, there are some mulches that turn gray. They just look dead. It just makes the landscape look dead. And a mulch that will stand up to the live oak leaf blowing. Is that ever going to happen?
Well, it'd be mulch that was at least partially decomposed and probably had a little bit of mineral sand or something mixed with it. I don't believe in blowing leaves away. Those leaves are making more mulch. I mean, that tree's taking up all those nutrients from in the ground, putting in its leaves, and then that's Mother Nature's way of putting that mineral back on the surface of the ground where it's available to more plants. When we blow it away, bag it, get rid of it, we're totally defeating how Mother Nature is trying to enrich the soil. Let those leaves lie. Shred them up if you can with a lawnmower. Spray them with molasses or something to make them decompose more quickly. But leaf blowers are the worst thing in the world. Those leaves are there for a purpose. And we're just throwing the leaves away and then buying more mulch to put out, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Mulches, as far as retaining their color,